In the gardens of Willow Creek Plantation, a civil rights attorney was about to shatter Southern hospitality's facade. What started as a family wedding took a shocking turn when she discovered deliberate racial exclusion. Maya Johnson wasn't your typical wedding guest. For 30 years, she had navigated being the only Black member of a white family, known for her unwavering pursuit of justice. When seated behind the kitchen, invisible yet present, she made a decision that would expose buried family secrets. What began as obligation became public reckoning. Cedar Falls would never be the same. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Blue Ridge Mountains unfurled before Maya Johnson like a familiar yet unwelcoming embrace, their ancient peaks shrouded in morning mist. Her rental car wound through roads memorized in childhood, each curve bringing back memories she'd spent years trying to quiet. 3 years since she'd driven these mountain roads, breathed the thin air of Cedar Falls, North Carolina. 3 years since she'd last subjected herself to family obligations wrapped in Southern hospitality. Past Johnson's Creek, where she'd learned to fish with Uncle Ray before he stopped taking her because the other men might not understand. Past the old textile mill, its broken windows reflecting October sky like dead eyes. Past the white-steepled Baptist church where she'd been baptized at 12, surrounded by a congregation that smiled on Sundays but whispered the rest of the week. Maya's phone buzzed. Marcus, checking in from Detroit, where his police misconduct investigation kept him tethered to deadlines. "How are the mountains treating you?" His voice filled the car with warmth that felt foreign against the cool mountain air. "Like they always have," Maya replied carefully. "Beautiful from a distance, complicated up close." Marcus chuckled, concern evident beneath. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone this weekend. You're successful, accomplished, loved. Their inability to see that is their failure, not yours." The words landed with precision and comfort. Marcus understood the weight she carried in ways her family never had. Growing up Black in Detroit had given him different scars, but scars nonetheless. He recognized the exhaustion of being the only one in the room, the constant performance, required to make others comfortable. "I know," she said, though her grip on the steering wheel suggested otherwise. "This is the last time. Rebecca's wedding, then I'm done with Cedar Falls family obligations. Until the next one." There won't be a next one. But Maya knew the pattern. Always another event where family duty trumped self-preservation, where her desire to belong battled against mounting evidence that she never would. Not really, not in the way that mattered. Maya pulled into the gravel driveway of 412 Maple Street, the 2-story white colonial where she'd been raised after her mother's death. The house looked smaller, paint slightly faded, shutters bearing scars from last winter's ice storms. Eleanor's flower garden still bloomed along the front porch, late-season mums and asters speaking to her aunt's desperate need to maintain appearances. The front door opened before Maya could steel herself. Eleanor Matthews emerged, wiping hands. On a dish towel, silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She'd grown thinner, more fragile somehow, but her smile remained bright and determined. "Maya, honey." Eleanor's arms opened wide. "Look at you, all professional in that beautiful suit. I've missed you so much." The embrace felt like stepping into memory. Warm, familiar, tinged with unacknowledged sadness. Eleanor smelled like vanilla and lavender, the same combination that had comforted Maya through nightmares and first-day anxieties. For a moment, Maya let herself sink into it, remembering what it felt like to be someone's child. "Hi, Aunt Eleanor. The house looks good." "Oh, you know me. Always puttering." Eleanor stepped back, studying Maya's face. "You look tired, honey. That big city life wearing on you?" There it was, the first gentle dig wrapped in concern. The suggestion that her life in Charlotte, her career, her choices were somehow exhausting rather than fulfilling. That she was working too hard, trying too hard, being too much when she could simply come home and be less. I'm good, Aunt Eleanor. Really good. The firm just made me partner. Civil rights litigation, mostly employment discrimination cases. Eleanor's smile flickered, the way it always did when Maya mentioned her work, as if fighting for justice was a hobby she'd outgrow. That's wonderful, dear. Eleanor picked up Maya's suitcase. Come in. I've got coffee on and blueberry muffins. Rebecca is beside herself with excitement about you being here. She's been talking about it for weeks. Maya doubted that. Rebecca had sent exactly 3 text messages about the wedding, logistical, information delivered with the warmth of a court filing. But she followed Eleanor up porch steps that creaked in exactly the same places they had when she was 8. Inside felt like a museum of her childhood. Same floral wallpaper, same family photographs, though she noticed her law school graduation relegated to a smaller frame, pushed behind Eleanor's bridge club trophy. The kitchen still smelled like cinnamon and coffee, still bore the yellow, ceiling stain from an upstairs leak never properly fixed. I put you in the guest room, Eleanor said, avoiding Maya's eyes. Your old room is. Well, I've been using it for storage. Rebecca's wedding dress is in there, and all the decorations. You know how these old houses are for space. Maya felt the familiar sting. Her childhood bedroom, the space that had been hers for 10 years, converted to storage. Not an office, not a craft room. Storage. A place for things that mattered only temporarily. Of course, the guest room is fine. Eleanor busied herself, with coffee mugs, movements quick and nervous. The whole family is excited to see you. The Hartwells are such lovely people. Bill Hartwell owns half the county. Real estate, construction, that new shopping center by the highway. Maya accepted coffee, noting Eleanor's breathless chatter that always accompanied avoidance. Tell me about the Hartwells. Rebecca's marrying into quite the prominent family. Eleanor's face lit up. Oh, they're wonderful people. Old Cedar Falls family. Bill's grandfather started the lumber business that built half the town. They've been so generous with the wedding, paying for everything. The venue alone must have cost a fortune. What venue did they choose? Eleanor paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. Willow Creek Plantation. It's been beautifully restored, Maya. They do the most elegant events there now. The gardens are stunning. Maya's stomach dropped. A plantation. Of course. Nothing said, welcome to the family, like celebrating at a location built on enslaved people's backs. She could feel Eleanor watching, waiting for reaction, probably preparing her speech about how it was just a beautiful venue now. That's quite a choice, Maya said carefully. I know what you're thinking, Eleanor rushed to say. But Maya, honey, it's different now. Completely renovated. They have a beautiful historical marker about the Underground Railroad. Very tasteful, very respectful. A historical marker. As if a bronze plaque could cleanse the grounds of their bloody history. Maya sipped coffee and said nothing, letting silence stretch until Eleanor's discomfort became palpable. The important thing is Rebecca's happiness, Eleanor continued, voice taking on a pleading quality. This is her special day, and the Hartwells have been so kind to include all of us. Bill specifically asked that all of Rebecca's family be seated with honor at the reception. Maya looked up. Eleanor's emphasis on with honor felt deliberate, scripted, as if delivering a message rather than sharing news. Maya's legal training kicked in, the same instinct that helped her recognize when opposing counsel was hiding. Something. That's generous of him. I'm looking forward to meeting him. Eleanor's smile looked strained now. He's a real Southern gentleman. Old school manners, you know. Very proper. very proper. Another phrase carrying weight in the South, loaded with implications about who belonged and who didn't. Maya had heard it her entire childhood, usually in reference to people who smiled while closing doors. Maya headed upstairs to the guest room, smaller than her childhood bedroom, decorated in generic country style that felt impersonal and cold. She sat on the bed that sagged in the middle and finally allowed herself to feel the weight of returning. Her phone buzzed. "How's the homecoming?" Marcus texted. "About what I expected," she typed back. Plantation wedding venue. My room converted to storage. Groom's family is old school proper. Jesus Christ, Maya, you don't have to do this. But she did. Despite everything, the microaggressions, exclusions, the constant feeling of being a guest in her own family. These were the only people who connected her to her mother. Eleanor had been there when her mother died, had held Maya's hand at the funeral, had tried in her flawed way to fill an impossible void. Maya studied the wedding invitation's elegant script announcing Rebecca Matthews and James William Hartwell III's union. The paper was thick, expensive, announcing serious money and social standing. At the bottom, smaller script noted the reception would be held immediately following the ceremony. No mention of seating arrangements, no details about dinner or dancing. Maya's legal mind caught on that omission. In her experience, when people left out details, it was usually because those details wouldn't be welcomed by all parties. Her phone rang. Marcus, not texting this time. "I can drive down tonight," he said without preamble. 5 hours, I'll be there by midnight. You don't have to do this alone. Maya closed her eyes, letting his offer wash over her like a lifeline. Marcus would come, would sit beside her at the plantation wedding, hold her hand during toasts about family unity, be there when smiles turned brittle and conversation turned exclusionary. "No," she said finally. "I need to do this myself. I need to see how it plays out." Maya. I spent my whole childhood wondering if I was imagining things, if I was being too sensitive, if I was the problem. I need to trust my instincts. This time. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, but if you need me, I'll call, I promise." After they hung up, Maya unpacked methodically. She'd brought 2 dresses, conservative navy blue for the rehearsal dinner, formal black for the wedding. Safe choices, colors that wouldn't draw attention or provoke comment. Downstairs, Eleanor moved around the kitchen, preparing what was probably an elaborate dinner designed to prove Maya was welcomed and loved. The sounds were comforting and familiar, the same rhythm of domesticity that had shaped her teenage years. But underneath lay awareness that nothing had really changed. She was still the outsider trying to earn her place, still the one who had to be carefully managed and accommodated. Mountain air grew cool as evening approached, carrying scents of wood smoke and dying leaves. Through her window, Maya could see Cedar Falls lights twinkling in the valley below. A small town that had shaped her in ways she was still discovering. A place that had taught her both the value of belonging and the cost of never quite achieving it. Tomorrow would bring the rehearsal, dinner, careful choreography of Southern social dynamics. She would meet Bill Hartwell and size up the man whose family Rebecca was joining. She would smile at relatives who barely knew her and make small talk with friends who had never quite accepted her. She would perform the role of grateful family member, included out of obligation rather than genuine welcome. But tonight, she was alone with her thoughts and mountain silence that pressed against windows like a living thing. Tonight, she could acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding. That she'd come back not because she expected anything different, but because she needed to know for certain how much she was willing to tolerate for the sake of family connection. Maya sat on the sagging bed and stared out at mountains that had watched over her entire life. Tomorrow would bring answers to questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. But tonight, she was suspended between past and future, between the child who had needed this family's acceptance, and the woman who was learning she might be strong enough to live without it. The mountain shadows deepened, and Maya Johnson prepared to face a reckoning that had been 30 years in the making. The mountain shadows deepened, and Maya Johnson prepared to face a reckoning that had been 30 years in the making. The morning of the rehearsal arrived with October sunlight streaming through Spanish moss and magnolia trees, casting dappled shadows across Willow Creek Plantation's manicured grounds. Maya rode in Eleanor's sedan, watching the countryside roll, past an uncomfortable silence broken only by the GPS's periodic directions and her aunt's nervous chatter about traffic and timing. "Remember, honey," Eleanor said for the third time, adjusting her rearview mirror. "This is Rebecca's special weekend. The Hartwells have been so generous and they're traditional people. They appreciate propriety." Maya nodded, recognizing the careful phrasing, propriety. Another Southern euphemism for knowing your place and staying in it. The plantation appeared around a bend in the road like something from a postcard. White columns gleaming in morning light, expansive grounds, dotted with century-old oaks draped in Spanish moss. The main house had been restored to magazine perfection, its antebellum architecture preserved with painstaking detail. A brass historical marker near the entrance gate caught Maya's eye. Willow Creek Plantation, a site of historical significance. Underground Railroad Station, 1858-1863. Eleanor parked near the event coordinator's tent, her movements quick and purposeful. "Isn't it beautiful? The restoration work they've done is just incredible. You'd never know about the difficult history." Maya stepped out of the car, her professional shoes sinking slightly into the soft earth. The irony wasn't lost on her. A civil rights attorney attending a family wedding at a plantation, no matter how beautifully restored or historically marked. The very ground beneath her feet had been worked by enslaved hands, watered with enslaved tears. "Maya!" a voice called across the lawn. Rebecca appeared from behind the main house, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour, wearing a casual sundress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She approached, with arms outstretched, though her smile seemed strained. "Rebecca." Maya accepted the brief hug, noting how quickly her cousin stepped back. "Congratulations. The venue is certainly grand. Thank you for coming. I know how busy you are with your work." Rebecca's tone carried a subtle emphasis on work, as if Maya's career was a peculiar hobby rather than a calling. "James is around here somewhere. He's dying to meet you." Eleanor had busied herself with unloading flower arrangements from the trunk, her movements betraying nervous energy. "The florist delivered everything to the house this morning. I told them we'd handle the final placement ourselves." A woman in her 50s approached, carrying a clipboard and wearing the efficient smile of someone managing complex logistics. Her dark skin and professional bearing immediately caught Maya's attention in a sea of white faces. "Mrs. Matthews?" The woman addressed Eleanor. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, your wedding coordinator. We met briefly last month." "Of course. Sarah, this is my niece, Maya Johnson." "Maya, Sarah has been absolutely wonderful coordinating everything." Sarah's handshake was firm, her assessment quick and knowing. "Ms. Johnson, Rebecca mentioned you're an attorney in Charlotte. Civil rights work, I understand." "That's right." Maya found herself relaxing slightly under Sarah's direct gaze. Here was someone who understood the dynamics of being the only Black professional in predominantly white spaces. "Well," Sarah continued, her tone carefully neutral, "we should probably begin the walkthrough. The ceremony space is set up in the garden, and we'll need to review positioning for the wedding party." As they walked toward the garden, Maya noticed the subtle hierarchies already in play. Eleanor walked beside Rebecca, discussing last-minute details with the fevered intensity of someone who needed everything to be perfect. Sarah maintained professional distance while clearly managing multiple moving parts. And Maya found herself trailing slightly behind, present but peripheral. The garden was undeniably beautiful. Roses and magnolias in full bloom, white chairs arranged in perfect rows, an archway of flowers marking where Rebecca and James would exchange vows. But Maya couldn't shake the weight of history, the knowledge that this beauty had been built on suffering. "There you are." A deep voice interrupted her thoughts. A tall man in his 20s approached, sandy hair and confident bearing marking him immediately as Southern aristocracy. "You must be Maya. I'm James, though everyone calls me Jamie." His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Maya recognized the type: charming, privileged, raised to command rooms and never doubt his place in them. "Congratulations, Jamie." "Rebecca." "Seems very happy." "We both are, and we're so pleased Rebecca's family could be here to celebrate with us." His words were correct, polite, but something in his tone suggested this inclusion hadn't been his first choice. "Maya!" Another voice boomed across the garden. An older man approached with the bearing of someone accustomed to deference. Even before introductions, Maya knew this was Bill Hartwell, the patriarch, the decision-maker, the man whose approval shaped the weekend's dynamics. "Dad, this is Maya Johnson, Rebecca's cousin." Jamie's introduction carried a slight tension, as if he were presenting something that might not be well received. Bill Hartwell's handshake was brief, his assessment quick and calculating. "Ms. Johnson, I've heard so much about you. Rebecca tells me you're a lawyer up in Charlotte." "That's right. Civil rights litigation, primarily employment discrimination, cases." Bill's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "How interesting. Must keep you busy, all that." "Advocacy work." The way he said advocacy made it sound vaguely distasteful, like something proper people didn't discuss in polite company. Maya felt Sarah's eyes on her, recognizing the subtle dismissal for what it was. "It does. There's unfortunately no shortage of cases where people need legal protection from workplace discrimination." Eleanor materialized beside them with the timing of someone who sensed rising tension. "Bill, Maya was just admiring the restoration work you've done here. The historical marker is such a thoughtful touch." "Thank you, Eleanor. We believe in honoring history while moving forward. The past is important, but we can't let it define us indefinitely." Bill's words were directed at Maya, though he addressed Eleanor. Some people get stuck dwelling on old grievances instead of appreciating present opportunities. Maya felt the deliberate nature of his comment, the way it positioned her advocacy work as dwelling rather than addressing ongoing injustices. But before she could respond, Sarah stepped forward. "Mr. Hartwell, shall we review the ceremony? Timeline? I want to ensure everything flows smoothly tomorrow." The next hour passed in a blur of logistics, processional order, cue timing, positioning for photographs. Maya found herself relegated to the edges of most discussions, included when protocol demanded, but excluded from the real decision-making. She watched Sarah navigate these dynamics with professional grace, clearly recognizing the subtle power plays at work. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. During a break in rehearsal activities, Sarah approached Maya near the plantation's kitchen garden. "How are you finding everything so far?" "Educational," Maya replied carefully. Sarah nodded, understanding passing. Between them, "I've been coordinating events here for 3 years. You learn to read the dynamics pretty quickly." "I imagine you do." "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." The seating arrangements alone took several revisions. Sarah's tone was professionally neutral, but her eyes conveyed a message Maya couldn't quite decode. "Oh? Family dynamics can be complicated. Everyone has different ideas about protocol, about who sits where, about what sends the right message." Sarah paused, studying Maya's face. "I always try to ensure everyone feels appropriately positioned." Maya's legal instincts sharpened. Sarah was trying to tell her something important without compromising her professional position. I appreciate your attention to detail. Of course, if you have any questions about tomorrow's arrangements, please don't hesitate to ask. I believe in transparency. Before Maya could probe further, Rebecca appeared with a clipboard and the frazzled energy of a bride managing too many details. Sarah, we need to finalize the reception layout. And Maya, Eleanor's looking for you, something about helping with centerpieces. As Sarah walked away, Maya caught her meaningful glance back. Whatever message the wedding coordinator was trying to convey, it would have to wait. But Maya filed the interaction away, her instincts telling her that Sarah Mitchell might be the one person at this wedding who understood exactly what was happening beneath the surface of Southern hospitality. The rehearsal concluded with polite applause and nervous laughter, everyone eager to move on to dinner and the real social navigation that awaited. Maya found herself wondering what tomorrow would bring, what seating arrangements and family dynamics would reveal about her place in this carefully orchestrated celebration. Eleanor's voice carried across the garden. Maya, honey, we should head back to get ready for dinner. Tonight you'll really get to meet everyone. Maya nodded, following her aunt toward the car. Behind them, the plantation house stood in afternoon sunlight, its white columns casting long shadows across grounds that had seen generations of joy and sorrow, celebration and suffering. Tomorrow, it would witness one more chapter in the ongoing story of who belonged and who didn't, who was welcomed and who was merely tolerated. As they drove away, Maya caught sight of Sarah Mitchell in her rearview mirror, still holding her clipboard, still managing the careful choreography of Southern social dynamics. Something told Maya that their conversation was far from over. As they drove away, Maya caught sight of Sarah Mitchell in her rearview mirror, still holding her clipboard, still managing the careful choreography of Southern social dynamics. Something told Maya that their conversation was far from over. The Cedar Falls Country Club occupied a hilltop overlooking the valley, its brick facade speaking to generations of careful exclusivity. Maya adjusted her navy dress as Eleanor parked among luxury vehicles marking tonight's social status. Through the windows, she could see guests mingling with the relaxed confidence of people in their natural habitat. Remember what I said about the Hartwells appreciating tradition, Eleanor murmured. They've been members here for 40 years. Inside, the dining room buzzed with pre-dinner conversation. Maya scanned the overwhelmingly white gathering, noting the particular comfort that came with generational wealth and social position. Maya! Rebecca appeared, resplendent in champagne-colored silk. Come meet everyone. Maya found herself guided toward a cluster of middle-aged couples, their conversation pausing as Rebecca made introductions. Names blurred, the Sinclairs, the Weatherbys, each handshake accompanied by polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Maya's a lawyer in Charlotte, Rebecca explained. Civil rights work, very passionate about her causes. The way Rebecca said causes made it sound like a quaint hobby. Maya recognized the deflection, her cousin preemptively minimizing any discomfort Maya's profession might cause. How interesting, murmured Mrs. Sinclair, her tone suggesting otherwise. That must be very challenging work. Rewarding when you help people find justice after discrimination, Maya replied. Evenly, uncomfortable silence settled over the group, broken by Mr. Weatherby clearing his throat. Well, we hope all that unpleasantness is mostly behind us now. Progress and all that. Maya felt Eleanor's warning hand on her arm before Pastor Michael Williams called for attention. A dignified black man in his 50s, he commanded immediate respect as guests found their seats. Maya noticed she'd been placed toward the back with distant relatives. Not the worst slight, but clearly not honored family seating. Pastor Williams began his blessing, emphasizing unity and acceptance in words that seemed directed beyond just the upcoming marriage. It was during the salad course that Maya overheard the conversation that changed everything. 2 tables away, Bill Hartwell's voice carried with unfortunate clarity. Seating arrangements for tomorrow require some delicacy. We want to be welcoming, of course, but mindful of our other guests' comfort. These situations require careful management, the other man replied. You don't want anyone feeling out of place. Exactly. Sarah Mitchell suggested we position Maya somewhere that provides appropriate discretion. Behind the kitchen area, perhaps. Still included, naturally, but positioned thoughtfully. Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Behind the kitchen. They were planning to seat her behind the kitchen, hidden from guests who might be uncomfortable with her presence. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. How's dinner going? Maya excused herself. To the ladies' room, hands shaking as she typed. They're planning to seat me behind the kitchen tomorrow. Overheard them discussing it. Her phone rang immediately. Maya, what the hell? Bill Hartwell talking about appropriate discretion and being mindful of other guests' comfort. Marcus was quiet. What are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to leave right now. And the other part? The other part is tired of running away from people who treat me like a problem to be managed. Maya returned as Pastor Williams began his toast about marriage requiring honesty and authentic communication. His eyes briefly met hers during the word authentic, as if he too understood the performance happening around them. The evening concluded with promises of excitement for tomorrow. As they drove home, Eleanor chatted happily while Maya's mind fixed on what she'd overheard. Tomorrow would bring the wedding ceremony, the reception, and her carefully orchestrated placement behind the kitchen. The question was no longer whether she would endure this final insult, but how she would respond. If they wanted to seat her behind the kitchen, she would accept that placement. But she wouldn't accept it silently. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning Maya had been avoiding her entire life. And this time, she wouldn't be the one looking away. The Cedar Falls Country Club occupied a hilltop overlooking the valley, its brick facade speaking to generations of careful exclusivity. Maya adjusted her navy dress as Eleanor parked among luxury vehicles marking tonight's social status. Through the windows, she could see guests mingling with the relaxed confidence of people in their natural habitat. Remember what I said about the Hartwells appreciating tradition? Eleanor murmured. They've been members here for 40 years. Inside, the dining room buzzed with pre-dinner conversation. Maya scanned the overwhelmingly white gathering, noting the particular comfort that came with generational wealth and social position. Maya! Rebecca appeared, resplendent in champagne-colored silk. Come meet everyone. Maya found herself guided toward a cluster of middle-aged couples, their conversation pausing as Rebecca made introductions. Names blurred. The Sinclairs, the Weatherbys, each handshake accompanied by polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Maya's a lawyer in Charlotte, Rebecca explained. Civil rights work, very passionate about her causes. The way Rebecca said causes made it sound like a quaint hobby. Maya recognized the deflection, her cousin preemptively minimizing any discomfort Maya's profession might cause. How interesting, murmured Mrs. Sinclair, her tone suggesting otherwise. That must be very challenging work. Rewarding when you help people find justice after discrimination, Maya replied. Evenly, uncomfortable silence settled over the group, broken by Mr. Weatherby clearing his throat. Well, we hope all that unpleasantness is mostly behind us now. Progress and all that. Maya felt Eleanor's warning hand on her arm before Pastor Michael. Williams called for attention. A dignified black man in his 50s, he commanded immediate respect as guests found their seats. Maya noticed she'd been placed toward the back with distant relatives. Not the worst slight, but clearly not honored family seating. Pastor Williams began his blessing, emphasizing unity and acceptance in words that seemed directed beyond just the upcoming marriage. It was during the salad course that Maya overheard the conversation that changed everything. 2 tables away, Bill Hartwell's voice carried with unfortunate clarity. Seating arrangements for tomorrow require some delicacy. We want to be welcoming, of course, but mindful of our other guests' comfort. These situations require careful management, the other man replied. You don't want anyone feeling out of place. Exactly. Sarah Mitchell suggested we position Maya somewhere that provides appropriate discretion, behind the kitchen area, perhaps. Still included naturally, but positioned thoughtfully. Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Behind the kitchen. They were planning to seat her behind the kitchen, hidden from guests who might be uncomfortable with her presence. Her phone buzzed. Marcus. How's dinner going? Maya excused herself to the ladies' room, hands shaking as she typed. They're planning to seat me behind the kitchen tomorrow. Overheard them discussing it. Her phone rang immediately. Maya? What the hell? Bill Hartwell talking about appropriate discretion and being mindful of other guests' comfort. Marcus was quiet. What are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to leave right now. And the other part? The other part is tired of running away from people who treat me like a problem to be managed. Maya returned as Pastor Williams began his toast about marriage requiring honesty and authentic communication. His eyes briefly met hers during the word authentic, as if he too understood the performance happening around them. The evening concluded with promises of excitement for tomorrow. As they drove home, Eleanor chatted happily while Maya's mind fixed on what she'd overheard. Tomorrow would bring the wedding ceremony, the reception, and her carefully orchestrated placement behind the kitchen. The question was no longer whether she would endure this final insult, but how she would respond. If they wanted to seat her behind the kitchen, she would accept that placement. But she wouldn't accept it silently. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning Maya had been avoiding her entire life, and this time, she wouldn't be the one looking away. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through thin curtains and Eleanor bustling downstairs. The wedding day had arrived with crystalline October clarity. She reached for her phone, finding Marcus's 6 a.m. text. Whatever happens today, I'm proud of you. You're stronger than they know. Downstairs, Eleanor arranged white roses with nervous energy, her smile bright but strained. Good morning, honey. Coffee's fresh and I made blueberry pancakes. Maya accepted coffee, noting how Eleanor avoided her eyes. The flowers are beautiful. Rebecca dropped them off early. She's at the salon now. Eleanor's chatter felt forced, desperate to fill space that might otherwise hold difficult conversations. I want everything perfect for her. The Hartwells have been so generous. Before Maya could respond, the doorbell rang. Sarah Mitchell entered with a garment bag and the focused expression of someone managing final preparations. Good morning, Maya. I hope you're ready for a beautiful day. As ready as I can be, Maya replied, noting Sarah's subtle assessment. Sarah turned to Eleanor. Mrs. Matthews, could we discuss final reception details privately? Maya caught fragments of their living room conversation about final positioning and ensuring everyone's comfort. When they returned, Sarah approached Maya directly. Ms. Johnson, might I have a word about today's schedule? On the front porch, Sarah's professional mask dropped slightly. I've been coordinating weddings for 12 years. What's happening here isn't subtle, and it isn't right. Maya's chest tightened. What are you telling me? Your seating assignment behind the kitchen service area was not my recommendation. When Mr. Hartwell insisted on it, I made clear this was inappropriate. I was overruled. The confirmation hit like a physical blow. Why tell me this? Sarah studied the distant mountains. Because you deserve to know what you're walking into. And because I have a daughter your age. If someone treated her this way at a family event, I'd want her to know she had an ally. What would you do? That's not for me to say, but whatever. You decide, I'll support it. Sometimes the truth needs to be heard, even when it's inconvenient. Sarah paused. There's something else. You were specifically excluded from the formal family photographs. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the accumulated weight of lifetime exclusions. The seating, the photographs, all part of the same message that she was family, only when convenient. Thank you for telling me. I know this compromises you professionally. Some things are more important than professional convenience. After Sarah left, Maya found Eleanor still arranging flowers with focused intensity. Aunt Eleanor, I need to ask you directly. Did you know about the seating arrangements? Eleanor's hands stilled, her facade cracking. Maya, honey, these things are complicated. The Hartwells have their ways, and Rebecca wanted everything perfect. Did you know? Eleanor's shoulders sagged. I knew there were considerations about placement, about making everyone comfortable. Everyone except me. Eleanor turned, tears in her eyes. You have to understand. This is Rebecca's day. The Hartwells are important people with certain expectations. If we could just get through today without complications. Maya stared at her aunt, seeing clearly the woman who had raised her. Eleanor wasn't malicious. She was weak. Someone who chose comfort over courage, harmony over honesty. I understand perfectly, Maya said quietly. I understand exactly what's being asked of me. Eleanor looked relieved, mistaking Maya's calm for capitulation. I knew you would. You've always been such a good girl, Maya. So understanding. Maya headed upstairs to prepare, leaving Eleanor to her flowers and illusions. In the guest room, she laid out her black dress, chosen for elegance and authority. She thought of Pastor William's words about authentic communication, about courage to speak truth when difficult. By the time she finished her makeup, Maya had made her decision. She would attend Rebecca's wedding. She would take her assigned seat behind the kitchen. And then, when the moment felt right, she would stand up and speak her truth. The mountains outside stood silent and eternal, witnesses to generations of celebration and reckoning. Today, they would witness one more chapter in the story of who belonged. Maya Johnson was about to rewrite that story forever. Maya stood at the edge of the plantation's formal garden, watching guests file toward their seats like participants in some elaborate theater piece. The morning revelation about her seating arrangement still burned in her chest, Sarah Mitchell's careful words echoing with each step she took down the brick pathway. Your aunt specifically requested that placement, Sarah had said, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal the discomfort beneath. Something about maintaining family harmony. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. Here she was, walking through gardens where enslaved people had once tended the very magnolias that now provided backdrop for a ceremony celebrating love and unity. The historic mansion loomed behind the altar, set up, its white columns gleaming in the October sunshine like monuments to willful ignorance. Everything about this place screamed antebellum romance to those who chose not to see its blood-stained foundations. She found her assigned seat in the back row, behind even some distant cousins she'd met only once at a funeral 5 years ago. The chair seemed to mock her with its careful placement, close enough to be counted as present, far enough to be forgotten in photographs. Around her, guests chatted quietly, their voices creating a gentle hum of anticipation that felt alien, to Maya's growing sense of isolation. Pastor Michael Williams stood at the altar, adjusting his vestments with careful precision. Maya caught his eye across the garden and saw something she recognized, the weight of performing faith while wrestling with conscience. She'd watched him navigate this balance before, delivering sermons about Christian love while carefully avoiding any mention of the systemic injustices that plagued their small community. Today, his discomfort seemed more pronounced, as if the opulent setting and obvious racial dynamics were testing his ability to maintain diplomatic silence. The string quartet began the processional, and Maya watched her family arrange themselves in the front rows with practiced ease. Eleanor wore a lavender dress that brought out her silver hair, her hands folded carefully in her lap as she avoided looking toward Maya's section. Rebecca's bridesmaids glided down the aisle in their carefully coordinated pastel gowns, each one a testament to the bride's vision of Southern perfection. When Rebecca appeared at the garden's entrance, Maya felt an unwelcome stab of emotion. Her cousin looked radiant in their grandmother's restored wedding dress, the lace and pearls catching the filtered sunlight like something from a fairy tale. For a moment, Maya remembered the girls they'd once been, playing dress-up in Eleanor's attic, dreaming about their future weddings, promising to be each other's maid of honor. That promise had been quietly forgotten years ago, replaced by polite Christmas cards and carefully neutral birthday wishes. David Hartwell waited at the altar with the confident bearing of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. He was handsome in the way that came with generations of good breeding and better nutrition, his smile radiating the easy charm of inherited privilege. Bill Hartwell sat in the front row, his satisfaction evident as he watched his son claim his bride from one of Cedar Falls' oldest families. The merger was complete, social, economic, and racial boundaries all carefully maintained under the guise of romantic love. Pastor Williams began the ceremony with a prayer about unity and acceptance that rang hollow against the carefully segregated seating arrangement. His words about God's love knowing no boundaries seemed directed more at his own conscience than at the gathered congregation, and Maya wondered if he was thinking about his own compromises, his own silences in the face of systematic exclusion. "Dearly beloved," he continued, his voice carrying across the garden with trained authority, "we gather today to witness the union of Rebecca and David, to celebrate their commitment to love, honor, and cherish one another through all of life's seasons." Maya listened to the familiar words and felt their weight differently than she had at other weddings. Here, surrounded by the visible evidence of her family's conditional acceptance, concepts like honor and cherishing seemed more complex, more fraught with unspoken conditions. The couple exchanged vows they'd written themselves, speaking about bringing our families together and creating new traditions while honoring the old. Rebecca's voice trembled with emotion as she promised to love David with all the strength of our shared heritage, while David spoke about building a foundation based on the values our families have always treasured. Maya felt sick. Every word about unity and acceptance was contradicted by her own placement in this ceremony, by the careful orchestration that ensured she remained visible enough to avoid obvious scandal, but invisible enough to avoid uncomfortable questions about inclusion. She was props in their performance of family harmony, evidence that they weren't the kind of people who excluded anyone, while being systematically excluded from meaningful participation. When Pastor Williams asked the congregation to stand and support the couple in their marriage, Maya remained seated for a long moment, watching the sea of guests rise around her. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. Once again, she was being asked to support a unity from which she was fundamentally excluded. Finally, she stood, but the movement felt like betrayal of something essential within herself. The kiss that sealed the marriage was met with enthusiastic applause, and Maya clapped along mechanically while watching Rebecca and David beam at their guests. In that moment, surrounded by celebration she couldn't fully join, Maya made a decision that surprised her with its clarity. She wouldn't continue to be a silent witness to her own marginalization. Whatever happened at the reception, she would find her voice, even if it meant shattering the perfect picture her family had spent so many years constructing. As the couple processed back down the aisle, Rebecca's eyes briefly met Maya's across the garden. Instead of the joy Maya expected to see, she caught something else, a flicker of guilt, quickly masked but unmistakably present. Rebecca knew. She'd always known. And in that moment of recognition, Maya felt the last of her self-doubt evaporate, replaced by a crystalline understanding that her family's love had always come with conditions she could never meet. The cocktail hour unfolded in the mansion's grand parlor, guests mingling beneath crystal chandeliers that had once illuminated slave auctions. Maya nursed a glass of champagne she didn't want, moving through conversations that felt choreographed in their politeness. Distant relatives asked about her work with the careful tone people used when discussing something they found vaguely threatening. Civil rights law, she explained to Bill Hartwell's sister, watching the woman's smile freeze momentarily. I represent voting rights cases mostly. How unimportant, the woman replied, her voice carrying the weight of unspoken judgment. Though I do hope you don't let work consume your whole life. Family is what really matters, don't you think? Maya agreed with appropriate murmurs while noting how the woman's eyes had already moved past her, seeking more comfortable company. This was the dance she'd learned to perform, present enough to avoid accusations of antisocial behavior, invisible enough to avoid making anyone genuinely uncomfortable with her presence or perspectives. Sarah Mitchell appeared at her elbow, with professional grace. Ms. Johnson? I wanted to let you know dinner will be served shortly. Your table is ready. Something in Sarah's tone made Maya study her face more carefully. The wedding planner's professional mask had slipped slightly, revealing what looked like genuine concern beneath her composed exterior. My table? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer would confirm her worst suspicions. Sarah's hesitation lasted only a moment. Follow me, please. They walked through the mansion's central hallway, past the formal dining room where Maya could see the head table being prepared with elaborate floral arrangements, past the sunroom where family tables were set with fine china and crystal, past the library where friends and colleagues would dine surrounded by leather-bound books that had never acknowledged her people's existence. Sarah stopped at a service corridor that led toward the kitchen. Through an archway, Maya could see a small table set for 6, positioned directly behind the industrial refrigerators where catering staff moved in efficient choreography. Here we are, Sarah said quietly, her professional training warring with obvious discomfort. Table 12. Maya stared at the setup, cheap folding chairs around a card table covered with the same linens as the other tables, but separated from the reception by the kitchen's hulking equipment. Her place card sat between 2 vendors' wives she'd never met, women who would spend the evening being polite to the bride's relative while catering staff bustled around them with dirty dishes and leftover food. This is where you put family? Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. Sarah looked away. The seating chart was very specific. Your aunt wanted to ensure you felt comfortable. The euphemism hung between them like smoke. Comfortable. Not included, not celebrated, but comfortable in a space where her presence wouldn't disrupt the careful social dynamics Rebecca and the Hartwells had orchestrated. Maya took her assigned seat, the metal chair cold against her back. Around her, the other table occupants introduced themselves with the careful politeness of people thrown together by circumstance rather than connection. The florist's wife, the photographer's assistant, the venue coordinator's daughter. All of them women whose presence was necessary, but whose visibility was meant to remain minimal. From her vantage point behind the kitchen, Maya could see the main reception through the service window. Eleanor sat at the family table, her attention carefully focused on her plate rather than searching for her niece. Rebecca and David held court at the head table, accepting congratulations from guests who streamed past in an endless receiving line of social affirmation. Bill Hartwell stood to offer the first toast, his voice carrying across the reception with practiced authority. To family, he declared, raising his crystal glass, to tradition, to the values that bind us together and make us strong. Maya lifted her plastic cup of champagne, the contrast not lost on her. She was close enough to hear every word, far enough away to understand that she was not included in Bill's definition of us. The applause that followed his toast seemed to echo off the kitchen's stainless steel surfaces, a hollow sound that matched the hollow feeling growing in her chest. A catering server squeezed past her chair, balancing a tray of dirty plates. "Excuse me, ma'am," he murmured, his eyes reflecting a sympathy Maya recognized. He understood what it meant to be present but invisible, necessary but excluded from the celebration he was helping to create. As the evening progressed through courses Maya barely tasted, she watched her family celebrate through the service window like she was observing actors on a distant stage. The photographer moved through the reception, capturing moments of joy and connection, but his lens never turned toward table 12. The videographer documented speeches and dances, but the kitchen area remained outside his frame. Maya felt the familiar burn of humiliation transform into something sharper, more focused. This wasn't an oversight or a mistake in logistics. This was deliberate, calculated exclusion, designed to maintain the facade of family inclusion while ensuring she remained literally and figuratively on the margins. When the best man stood to offer his toast, speaking about love conquering all divisions, Maya made her decision. She wouldn't sit silent anymore. The best man's toast concluded to polite applause, his words about love conquering all boundaries, still echoing in the air as he returned to his seat. The reception's gentle hum of conversation resumed, punctuated by the clink of crystal glasses and the soft scrape of silverware against china. Maya watched from behind the kitchen equipment as Bill Hartwell prepared to stand for what she knew would be the father of the groom's traditional remarks. But before he could rise, Maya pushed back her folding chair. The metal legs scraped against the kitchen's tile floor with a harsh sound that cut through the polite ambiance. The photographer's wife looked up in surprise, but Maya was already moving, walking around the industrial refrigerator that had blocked her from the main reception. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she emerged from the service area, each step carrying her further from the shadows where she'd been relegated and into the soft lighting of the main reception. Conversations began to falter as guests noticed the unexpected movement. The woman in the elegant black dress who seemed to be walking with purpose toward the head table. Eleanor saw her first. Maya watched her aunt's face cycle through confusion, recognition, and then dawning horror as she understood what was happening. Eleanor half rose from her chair, her mouth opening to say something, but Maya was already reaching for the microphone the best man had left on the head table. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice carrying across the reception with the trained authority of someone who'd argued before federal judges. The remaining conversations died instantly. "I'd like to say a few words." Bill Hartwell was on his feet now, his face flushed with indignation. "I'm sorry, but the toasts are concluded. This is Maya Johnson," Maya said into the microphone, cutting him off smoothly. "Rebecca's cousin. Family." The word carried weight she let settle over the silent reception. "And I have something to say about family." She could see Rebecca at the head table, her face pale above her white dress, her eyes wide with the kind of panic that came from watching something carefully orchestrated spin completely out of control. David looked confused, glancing between his new wife and his father, as if waiting for someone to explain what was happening. "I want to thank you all for being here today," Maya continued, her legal training keeping her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "To celebrate love and unity, and the bringing together of families. Beautiful words, beautiful sentiments." She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the reception, taking in the sea of white faces staring back at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "I've been listening to a lot of talk today about family, about tradition, about values that bind us together. And I've been thinking about my own experience of this family's values." Eleanor stood up completely now, her voice shaking. "Maya, please, this isn't what?" Maya turned toward her aunt, the woman who had raised her after her mother's death, who had claimed to love her while consistently failing to protect her. "This isn't appropriate. This isn't the time or place." She turned back to the microphone. "When exactly would be the appropriate time to discuss why I'm seated behind the kitchen? When would be the right moment to ask why the only Black member of this family is hidden away like a shameful secret?" A collective intake of breath rippled through the reception. Several guests began whispering urgently to each other. Maya could see Pastor Williams in her peripheral vision, his face a mask of internal conflict, as he watched his worst fears about this family's dynamics play out in public. "You see," Maya continued, her voice gaining strength as years of suppressed truth finally found their outlet. "I grew up believing that if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, proved myself worthy enough, I would finally belong. Valedictorian of my high school class. Full scholarship to Duke. Law degree from Georgetown. Civil rights attorney fighting for justice." Her laugh carried no humor. But none of that mattered, did it? Because the problem was never my worthiness. The problem was that I would never be white enough for this family's comfort. Bill Hartwell stepped forward, his voice commanding. "Security, please escort this woman." "This woman," Maya interrupted, her voice rising with controlled fury, "is family. This woman was raised by Eleanor Matthews after my mother, her sister, died. This woman has spent 27 years pretending not to notice the microaggressions, the exclusions, the careful way conversations change when I enter a room." She could see Sarah Mitchell near the entrance. Her professional composure cracked as she watched the scene unfold. The wedding planner's face showed not shock, but recognition. The look of someone witnessing confirmation of what they'd already suspected. "Do you want to know what values this family really treasures?" Maya asked, her voice carrying to every corner of the reception. "The value of appearance over truth. The value of comfort over justice. The value of maintaining social status over actually loving the people you claim as family." Rebecca finally found her voice, tears streaming down her face. "Maya, please stop. You're ruining—" "I'm ruining what? Your perfect day? Your perfect image?" Maya's voice softened, but the words cut deeper. "Rebecca, we used to play together. In Eleanor's attic. We promised to be each other's maid of honor. Do you remember that? Or do you remember deciding that having a black maid of honor might not photograph well for your society wedding?" The reception had gone completely silent, except for the quiet sound of Rebecca's crying. Maya looked out at the assembled guests. These pillars of Cedar Falls society who had spent decades pretending that their polite exclusions weren't racism, that their careful boundaries weren't bigotry. "I want you all to know something," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I'm done being grateful for scraps of conditional acceptance. I'm done pretending that love that comes with terms and conditions is actually love at all. And I'm done protecting this family's reputation by staying silent about their failures." She set the microphone down gently, the soft thud amplified through the speakers. The silence that followed felt pregnant with possibility and destruction in equal measure. "Congratulations on your marriage," Maya said directly to Rebecca, her voice carrying without amplification across the stunned reception. "I hope you build something better than what you inherited." Then she turned and walked toward the exit, her head high, leaving behind the wreckage of carefully constructed facades and the beginning of long overdue reckonings. The silence that followed Maya's departure lasted exactly 17 seconds. Sarah Mitchell would remember counting them later, watching the digital display on her event coordinator's tablet as the reception held its collective breath. Then, chaos erupted like a dam bursting under pressure. Bill Hartwell's voice cut through the stunned quiet first, sharp with authority and outrage. "Security! I want that woman removed from the premises immediately." But Maya was already through the mansion's front entrance, her footsteps echoing on the wraparound porch before disappearing into the October evening. The security guards, two local men hired more for their presence than their training, looked uncertainly between their employer and the empty doorway. "She's gone, sir," one of them said quietly. "Then make sure she stays gone." Bill's face had turned an alarming shade of red above his formal tie. "If she comes back, she's trespassing. Call the sheriff if you have to." At the head table, Rebecca's sobs had escalated to near hyperventilation. Her carefully styled hair had begun to escape its pins, and mascara tracked dark lines down her cheeks, transforming her from radiant bride to tragic figure in the span of minutes. David sat frozen beside her, one hand hovering uncertainly over her shoulder, as if he wasn't sure whether touching her would help or make things worse. "My wedding," Rebecca gasped between sobs. "She ruined my wedding. How could she do this to me?" Eleanor finally moved, abandoning her table to rush toward her daughter with the desperate efficiency of someone trying to contain a disaster already beyond control. "Sweetheart, we'll fix this. We'll make it right. The evening isn't over." "Fix it?" Rebecca's voice cracked with hysteria. "Everyone heard what she said. Everyone knows now. How do you fix that?" The guests had begun to react according to their natures and social positions. Some of the older women clustered together in urgent whispered conferences, their faces tight with the particular displeasure of people whose carefully maintained social order had been publicly challenged. Several couples near the entrance were already making quiet exits, murmuring excuses about early morning commitments while avoiding eye contact with the family. But not everyone was fleeing. Pastor Williams stood slowly from his table, his dark face grave with something that looked like recognition rather than shock. He'd heard Maya's words not as scandalous revelations, but as confirmations of truths he'd been witnessing and failing to address for years. Sarah Mitchell found herself caught between professional duty and moral conviction. Her job required her to smooth over the evening's disruption, to somehow salvage the celebration her clients had paid handsomely to create. But Maya's words had named things Sarah had observed throughout her career: the careful ways families managed their diversity, the subtle exclusions that maintained social comfort at the cost of human dignity. "Should I?" Sarah began, approaching Eleanor with her tablet ready to implement whatever damage control seemed possible. "Can you get everyone to sit back down?" Eleanor asked frantically. "Maybe if we continue with the evening as planned." "Mom!" Rebecca's voice cut through her mother's desperate planning with flat finality. "Look around. Really look." Eleanor followed her daughter's gaze across the reception. Nearly a quarter of the guests had already left or were in the process of leaving. Those who remained sat stiffly at their tables, the easy conviviality of the evening replaced by the uncomfortable tension of people processing uncomfortable truths. The photographer had stopped taking pictures, recognizing that no one would want memories of this particular moment preserved. "She planned this," Bill Hartwell said, his voice carrying the cold certainty of someone looking for a target for his rage. "This was calculated, malicious. She came here specifically to destroy this family." Pastor Williams finally spoke, his voice cutting through the accusations with quiet authority. "I don't think Maya Johnson planned anything except attending her cousin's wedding." All eyes turned to him, and Sarah could see the moment of choice playing out on his face. For years, he'd maintained careful neutrality, walking the line between moral leadership and social acceptability. Maya's speech had eliminated that middle ground. "She spoke her truth," Pastor Williams continued, his words carrying the weight of ministerial authority even as they challenged his congregation's comfort. "And from what I witnessed tonight, it needed speaking." The reaction was swift and predictable. Several of the older church members rose from their tables with expressions of scandalized disapproval. Bill Hartwell's face cycled through shades of rage as he processed the pastor's implicit criticism. "Are you saying you support what that woman just did?" Bill's voice carried the dangerous edge of a man unused to having his authority questioned, especially by someone he considered an employee of his community. "I'm saying that seating a family member behind the kitchen speaks louder than any word spoken from a pulpit about love and inclusion." Pastor Williams straightened to his full height, and Sarah realized she was witnessing something rare, a moment when someone chose principle over comfort, truth over convenience. "I'm saying that Maya Johnson showed more Christian courage in 5 minutes than this community has shown in years. The implications of his words rippled through the remaining guests like shockwaves. This wasn't just about Maya's outburst anymore. It was about the systemic failures that had made her outburst necessary. Eleanor sank into a chair, the full weight of the evening's revelations settling on her shoulders. For the first time, she seemed to truly understand what her well-meaning but inadequate efforts at inclusion had actually accomplished. She'd raised Maya with love, but had consistently chosen peace over justice, comfort over confrontation. Every time she'd asked Maya to let things go or not make everything about race, she'd been asking her to collaborate in her own marginalization. "I need to call her," Eleanor said quietly. "I need to explain." "Explain what?" Rebecca's tears had stopped, replaced by something harder. That everything she said was true? That we've been lying to ourselves for years? David finally found his voice, though it came out uncertain and confused. "I don't understand what just happened. Maya seemed nice at dinner last night." "She is nice," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "She's always been nice. That's the problem. We taught her to be grateful for scraps and call it love." Sarah Mitchell realized she was witnessing more than a wedding disruption. She was watching a family forced to confront decades of willful blindness in the space of a single evening. As a Black woman who had built her business by carefully navigating similar social dynamics, she understood both Maya's courage and the cost it would exact. The evening was beyond salvaging, but something more important than a wedding reception was taking shape in its ruins. Truth had a way of demolishing carefully constructed facades, but it also created space for something more authentic to grow. The question was whether this family would have the courage to build something better from the wreckage, or whether they would simply rebuild the same comfortable lies that Maya had finally refused to accept. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she started the rental car, the adrenaline from her confrontation still coursing through her system like electricity seeking ground. The plantation's circular driveway stretched before her, lined with luxury vehicles that belonged to guests who were probably still processing what they'd witnessed. She could see the mansion's windows glowing warm against the October darkness, the reception continuing without her, or perhaps collapsing entirely in her wake. Her phone buzzed insistently from the passenger seat as she navigated onto the main road. The caller ID showed Eleanor's name, followed immediately by Rebecca, then a number she didn't recognize. Maya let them all go to voicemail, needing distance, and silence before she could process anyone else's reaction to what she'd done. The mountain highway unwound before her headlights, each curve taking her further from Cedar Falls and the life she'd just irrevocably altered. She'd known, even as the words left her mouth, that there would be no going back from this moment. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt, and some bridges weren't worth saving. 20 minutes into the drive, Maya pulled into the parking lot of a roadside diner that had been serving truckers and tourists since the 1950s. The neon sign flickered, "Maggie's Good Eats," in pink and blue letters that felt like a beacon of normalcy after the evening's surreal drama. Inside, she could see a handful of late-night diners nursing coffee and pie, people living regular lives unmarked by family dysfunction and racial reckonings. She turned off the engine and finally checked her phone. 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and 34 text messages. The digital evidence of the chaos she'd left behind felt abstract, like statistics from someone else's life. Before she could lose her nerve, Maya called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, his voice thick with sleep but instantly alert. "Maya, what's wrong? It's almost midnight." "I did it," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "I finally did it." "Did what? Are you okay? You sound—" "I told them the truth." The words tumbled out in a rush. All of it. In front of everyone. I took the microphone at Rebecca's wedding reception, and I told them exactly what I thought about their family values and their conditional love, and seating me behind the kitchen like I was something to be ashamed of. Silence stretched across the phone connection. Maya could picture Marcus in their bedroom in Charlotte, probably sitting up now, processing the magnitude of what she'd just told him. "Holy shit," he said finally. "You actually did it. You're not angry? You're not going to tell me I should have just left quietly?" Angry? Marcus's voice carried a warmth that made her throat tight. "Maya, I'm proud of you, terrified for you, but proud. How do you feel?" The question caught her off guard. How did she feel? The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a complex mixture of liberation and loss, validation and grief. "Like I just performed surgery on myself without anesthesia," she said finally. "It hurt, but something that needed to come out is finally gone." "Where are you now?" "Some diner on the highway. I couldn't drive all the way home without stopping." "I think I'm in shock." "Good. Don't drive when you're in shock. Get some coffee, take your time. I'll wait up for you." After they hung up, Maya sat in the car for another few minutes, watching truckers move between the diner and the gas pumps with the easy efficiency of people who knew their place in the world. She envied them that certainty, even as she recognized that she'd just chosen uncertainty over the false comfort of staying silent. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize with a local area code. "Maya? This is Sarah Mitchell, from the wedding." Maya hesitated, then answered, "Sarah. I assume you're calling to tell me I'm banned from every venue in Western North Carolina. Actually, I'm calling to see if you're okay, and to thank you." "Thank me?" "For saying what needed to be said." Sarah's voice carried a weariness that suggested she'd spent years witnessing similar dynamics. "I've been planning weddings in this area for 8 years. I've seen families rearrange seating charts to manage their diversity, watched relatives get relegated to back tables or excluded entirely from photos. I've never seen anyone call it out publicly." Maya felt tears she hadn't expected sting her eyes. "I probably ruined your professional relationship with the Hartwells." "The Hartwells can find another wedding planner. There are more important things than business relationships." Sarah paused. "I wanted you to know that Pastor Williams defended you after you left. Really defended you. I think you may have given him the courage to finally take a stand." "And Rebecca? Eleanor?" "Eleanor is processing. Rebecca is devastated. But I'm not sure if it's about the wedding being disrupted or about having to face what you said. Time will tell which person she chooses to become after tonight." After Sarah hung up, Maya finally went into the diner. The interior was exactly what she'd expected. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkerboard floors, a counter lined with stools where a lone trucker nursed coffee and read something on his phone. The waitress was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the efficient movements of someone who'd been serving people for decades. "Coffee, hun?" she asked as Maya slid into a corner booth. "Please, and maybe some pie. Whatever's good." "Apple's fresh today. Made it myself." The waitress studied Maya's formal dress with curiosity but without judgment. "You okay? You look like you've had a night." "I've definitely had a night," Maya agreed. "But I think I'm going to be okay." As she sat in the diner, eating apple pie that tasted like comfort and watching late-night travelers move through their lives, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the fragile peace that came from avoiding conflict, but the deep peace that came from finally aligning her actions with her values. Her phone buzzed with another text from Eleanor. "Please call me. We need to talk. I know I failed you, and I want to do better." For the first time all evening, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the bridge wasn't entirely burned. Maybe, in the wreckage of the evening's confrontation, there was space for something more honest to grow. She finished. Her pie and coffee, left a generous tip for the waitress who'd provided sanctuary without questions, and walked back to her car. The drive to Charlotte stretched ahead of her, but it no longer felt like fleeing. It felt like going home. To Marcus, to Thurgood, to the life she'd built where her worth wasn't conditional on her willingness to stay silent. As she pulled back onto the highway, Maya realized that for the first time in her adult life, she was driving toward something rather than away from it. She was driving toward the person she'd always had the courage to become, if only she'd been brave enough to stop seeking permission to exist authentically. The mountains held their ancient silence around her, but Maya no longer felt alone in it. She'd found her voice, and even if it had cost her the family she'd thought she wanted, it had given her something more valuable: the unshakable knowledge that she would never again accept love that required her to diminish herself to receive it. 3 months after the wedding, Maya stood in her Charlotte kitchen preparing dinner for people who had become her chosen family. The January afternoon light filtered through windows that overlooked a neighborhood where diversity wasn't performed, but simply existed, where her black neighbors weren't tokens, and her white neighbors didn't treat her presence as remarkable. This was home in a way Cedar Falls had never been. The consequences of her wedding speech had rippled through her life, like stones thrown into still water. Rebecca hadn't spoken to her since that night, though Eleanor had reached out repeatedly, each conversation a careful excavation of decades of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. Some wounds, Maya had learned, required time and intention to heal properly. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Mitchell. "Running 5 minutes late, traffic on I-77. Can't wait to see you." Maya smiled, still surprised by the friendship that had emerged from that chaotic evening. Sarah had become an unexpected ally, someone who understood the careful navigation required to maintain professional success while refusing to compromise personal integrity. More than that, she'd become the kind of friend Maya had always longed for, but never quite believed she deserved. Someone who saw her fully and loved her anyway. The doorbell rang, and Maya opened it to find Pastor Michael Williams standing on her porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing the relaxed expression of someone who had found peace with difficult decisions. In the months since the wedding, he had transformed his ministry, using his pulpit to address systemic racism directly rather than hiding behind comfortable platitudes about colorblind love. The change had cost him some congregants, but had brought him a deeper sense of purpose. "Maya," he said, pulling her into a warm hug. "Thank you for having me. I brought a Cabernet that I thought might go well with whatever smells so good in there." "Marcus is making his famous lasagna," Maya said, leading him into the living room where Marcus was setting the table with their good dishes, the ones they used for celebrations and people who mattered. "He's been working on it all afternoon." Pastor Williams, Michael as he insisted she call him now, settled into their sofa with the easy comfort of someone who had become a regular presence in their home. "How are things with Eleanor?" Maya considered the question as she poured wine. Her relationship with her aunt remained complicated, marked by genuine efforts at reconciliation, tempered by the realistic understanding that some damage couldn't be completely undone. Eleanor had begun therapy, something she'd mentioned with characteristic nervousness during their last phone call, as if admitting the need for professional help was itself a moral failing. "Better," Maya said finally. "Honest, for the first time. She's trying to understand instead of trying to fix things. It's progress." "And Rebecca?" Still radio silence. Eleanor says she's struggling, but not enough to actually reach out. Maya shrugged, the gesture carrying less pain than it once would have. "I've stopped waiting for her to become someone she's not ready to be." The doorbell rang again, and this time it was Sarah, carrying flowers and wearing the kind of genuine smile Maya had rarely seen in Cedar Falls, the smile of someone who didn't have to perform happiness for social acceptability. "Sorry I'm late," Sarah said, handing Maya the bouquet. "I stopped by that new market on the way and got completely distracted by their cheese selection." "Oh, hi, Michael. How's the new sermon series going?" As they settled around the dinner table, Maya marveled at the easy conversation that flowed between these people who had become her true family. Michael shared stories from his congregation's recent community service projects, initiatives that focused on concrete action rather than abstract charity. Sarah talked about her evolving business, how she'd begun incorporating explicit discussions about inclusion and representation into her wedding planning consultations, sometimes losing clients, but gaining peace of mind. "I got a letter last week," Maya said as Marcus served the lasagna, "from a young woman in Cedar Falls. Apparently, word about the wedding has gotten around, and she wanted to thank me for speaking up." "Really?" Sarah leaned forward with interest. "What did she say?" Maya retrieved the letter from the kitchen counter, unfolding the carefully written pages. "Her name is Jasmine. She's 19, works at the grocery store, and she'd been experiencing harassment from customers who thought she didn't belong in town. She said seeing someone finally call out the racism gave her courage to file a complaint with management instead of just enduring it." "That's incredible," Michael said, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who understood how individual courage could inspire collective change. One person speaking truth can give permission for others to find their voices. "It also cost me my relationship with half my extended family," Maya pointed out, though without bitterness. "Christmas was interesting this year. Very quiet." Marcus reached for her hand across the table. "But we had Sarah and Michael over for Christmas dinner, and it was the best holiday you've had in years." Maya squeezed his fingers, remembering that December evening when they'd gathered around this same table, sharing stories and laughter without the careful navigation required at family gatherings in Cedar Falls. No one had asked her to tone down her opinions or avoid topics that might make others uncomfortable. No one had treated her presence as a favor they were bestowing rather than a gift they were receiving. "The thing is," Maya said, addressing the table but looking at each face in turn, "I spent so many years trying to earn a place in a family that was never going to fully accept me. I thought if I just proved myself worthy enough, achieved enough, caused little enough trouble, they'd finally see me as truly belonging. But belonging isn't something you earn," Sarah said quietly. "It's something you're given freely, or it's not really belonging at all." "Exactly. And you all gave me that. Belonging without conditions, acceptance without performance requirements." Maya gestured around the table. "This is what family actually looks like." Michael raised his wine glass. "To chosen family, to the courage, to speak truth. And to Maya, who showed us all what integrity looks like even when it's costly." As they toasted, Maya felt the deep satisfaction that came from aligning her life with her values rather than her fears. The Maya who had driven up to Cedar Falls 3 months ago had been seeking validation from people who were constitutionally unable to provide it. The Maya sitting at this table had learned to create the family she needed rather than waiting for the family she'd inherited to become something they weren't capable of being. After dinner, as they sat in the living room with coffee and the kind of easy conversation that came with genuine connection, Maya's phone rang. Eleanor's name appeared on the screen, and Maya felt the familiar mixture of hope and caution that marked their evolving relationship. "Go ahead," Marcus said, recognizing the caller. "We'll be here when you're done." Maya stepped into the kitchen for privacy. "Hi, Eleanor." "Maya, sweetheart." Eleanor's voice carried a warmth that had taken months to develop, the sound of someone learning to love without conditions. "I hope I'm not interrupting your evening." "Not at all. I'm having dinner with friends." "What's going on?" "I wanted you to know that I've been talking to my therapist about hosting a family gathering. A real one this time, where you're not hidden away or treated as an afterthought. Where we celebrate you properly." Eleanor paused. "I know I have a lot to make up for, and I can't undo the years of getting it wrong. But I'd like to try getting it right, if you're willing." Maya looked through the kitchen doorway at her chosen family, People who were laughing at something Marcus had said. People who had never needed her to prove her worth or earn her place among them. The contrast wasn't lost on her. I appreciate that, Eleanor, I really do. But I need you to understand something. I'm not going to go back to being grateful for scraps and calling it love. If you want me at a family gathering, it needs to be because you value my presence, not because you're trying to absolve guilt. I understand, Eleanor said, her voice steady. And Maya, I'm proud of you. For what you said at the wedding, for refusing to accept less than you deserved. It took me too long to realize that your speaking up wasn't the problem. My failure to protect you was the problem. After they hung up, Maya returned to the living room where her friends were planning a weekend trip to the mountains. Not to Cedar Falls, but to a place where they could hike and laugh and simply exist without the weight of family dysfunction and social performance. Everything okay? Sarah asked. More than okay, Maya said, settling back into her place among people who had never asked her to diminish herself to fit their comfort level. Eleanor's making progress. But honestly, even if she wasn't, I'd still have everything I need right here. As the evening wound down and their friends prepared to leave, Maya stood in her doorway watching them walk to their cars. These people who had become her true family through choice rather than biology. She thought about the girl she'd been, driving through the mountains toward a wedding where she'd be hidden behind the kitchen, and marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment of complete belonging. Inside, Marcus was loading, the dishwasher, humming softly to himself, a man who had never once suggested she should be grateful for his love or prove herself worthy of his respect. Thurgood wound around her legs, purring with the uncomplicated affection of a creature who loved without conditions. This was home. This was family. This was what happened when you stopped accepting crumbs and started building the feast you deserved. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.